All right, so next part of the shoe process, this contour drawing. We're gonna do a little outdoor work today. You should have a contour drawing of your shoe and used it to create a final drawing in ink. Should be 2 in the picture, 2/3 of your space being filled up. And now we want to get to the part where we can add a little watercolor. But before you add watercolor, I'm going to ask that you turn in a practice sheet to Classroom. I will make an assignment for it. So the first thing that we need to do is make the practice sheet and paint. Then the second thing is paint the practice sheet. So let's get ready for this. You will need some watercolor paints, just Prang, Crayola, either one of those will work. If you want to spend a little bit more money and get the concentrated ones that are in the tubes, that will be fine. I think at the most they were like $5 at Walmart. Brushes. I did leave you a brush in your package that you picked up from school. It has the synthetic bristle end to it, so it doesn't have a lot of give. It soaks up water fairly well, but this is an all-purpose brush for if we need to use acrylics as well. Watercolor brushes will come with either synthetic or real hair. When I say real hair, I mean animal hair, like cheaper animal hair on this one. But it has some bend to it, but it soaks up water really easily, and it comes to a nice point so that you can use the point of it for smaller spaces. Find a container that you can put water in. I usually find something that's a little bit wider, more like a bowl shape, because if you put it in a cup, it tends to want to spill easily. So I would find something that you know isn't going to spill over and mess up your whole picture or paper. If you want to mix colors, I use styrofoam plates. Plastic plates work well too. Something that won't soak up water, obviously. All right, next step. I'm going to turn the camera down so that you can see my paper. So give me a second. And you might want to find a paper towel just so that if you get too much paint in an area, or something that you can wipe your brush off with as well. All right, here we go. I want you to be able to see the table. Oops, sorry. There you go. Fix this. All right, so grabbing my pencil, moving some of this stuff out of the way. I have too much stuff here. There we go. All right, paper in your folder. You should have some that's a heavier piece of paper, that's the same paper that you put your shoes on. I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to open it back up, but I'm only using half of it. That way, if you want to use the other half to practice on, like to see what colors first before you put them down, that's fine with me. So we want to divide our paper, and I'm going to use 4 lines to do it. I don't care how you make your lines. Some could be overlapping several times. Maybe you don't want them to overlap at all. Whatever you decide. So that kind of divides up our paper there so that we have areas to paint in. Now, I'm just going to use out of these for the most part. I think they're easy to use, fast. I'm going to put some water on. Now remember, this is watercolor, so you have to add water to the paint. We want to really make like paint soup, I always tell my younger ones. Because this is an all-purpose paper and not exactly watercolor paper, many times I'll keep areas of this wet as I'm using my paint so that I can spread it around. With watercolor, you want to be able to see the paper through it so that there's some transparency to it. Do you see how easily that spread when I did that? Now, maybe that's too much. Or maybe you like that look where it's really watery. We'll try a couple of different techniques. When it's like that, it's nice to blend colors. So I'm gonna add in a little bit more. All right, and then, you know, see how it dries like that. All right, so let's try something else. Now, this is really runny. So if it gets too runny like that, you can always take your paper towel and just blot it a little bit, soak it back up. That's why I like to have a paper towel handy. And because this is very wet along the edges, I will continue on to another space a lot of times too. Now let's put the paint directly on there and then see what happens with that. Works fairly well. What if we put some paint down and then we just rinse our brush off and we pull a little bit of that and let it fade out? We'll keep rinsing our brush out, letting it fade. I'll blend it back in. So we have some lighter areas and some darker areas, some heavier areas. But do you see how you can still see the paper through it? If I'm mashing my brush in that paint, it will get sticky. Let me show you what too much is. That's too much. Now if that happens, rinse your brush off, pull your paint, just pull it around. But with the cheaper paper, when it's not watercolor paper, many times you'll get more of a stain on it. So we want to avoid that if at all possible. Now while this is still wet, I can take another color too, just like I did before. But I'm going to have you beware of certain colors that don't work together very well. If I have in my set, the colors that are closest to each other are the ones that usually mix well together, so especially if they're right beside each other. I'm staying away from black today. You can practice with black, but please save it for last. Black is very heavy. It makes things look dirty. With watercolor, I try to avoid it and use other colors that are still dark to make things look darker without using the black. Now if you want to mix black with something, I do like that. So I could take my black, take a little bit, if I have black, and then I want to go in here and maybe add a little purple to it. Let's see what we get. That looks nice. And part of this is learning control of the paintbrush and the paint and just experimenting with colors and seeing what happens in a safe way. So before you start your shoe picture, and then while that's still wet, I'm going to pull some of that back off, and that gives me a neat effect too. That gives me some different texture. Now if you were doing that on your shoes, you want to be a little more careful because you might have certain areas that you don't want that to go into another spot with, all right? Okay, let's say that we get it all finished. After you practice it, I would like you to take a picture of it. You can do it with your device. You can snap it on your camera and then go into your photos and upload them. Or you could take it with your phone and then send it to your Gmail or my Gmail. You could send it to yours and then upload it to mine. Or you could save it in your drive and get on Classroom and upload it from there. There's lots of different ways that you can take a picture and send it to me. If you're not sure how to do it, you can contact me. All right, let's say that we get all done with our practice and you've uploaded it to me and I've seen it and approved it. Then you can go on to the next thing, and that would be taking those same ideas and putting them into your picture. Now, I'm going to point out a couple of things with this, and that is when you use the watercolor to make your picture more interesting, think about doing multiple colors, fading colors, blending colors, possibly not leaving spaces where there would be no color. Come up with a color scheme. I'm going to ask you to stick to a color scheme that works with both shoes so that they feel related and they feel cohesive. If you want to reverse it somehow so that you're still using the same colors, but you want to change it up that way, I would be okay with that. But we need to make this look like it's unified, and this is one way you can do it, is through the color of it. So sticking to a color scheme, color plan works well. Practice first though before you go on to this, and then this will be due next week. Think about if you want to make things look a little more three-dimensional, think about places where it would be darker. It goes around the edge. So I made my you don't have to, because this is just kind of a beginning watercolor practice and use of. So if you're not sure about something before you start on your shoes, check with me or tell me what your problem is, and hopefully we can solve it together. I'm asking you to not use the background at this point. If you want to do something minimal, like you wanted to make paint drip out here a little bit or have a couple of splatters, that would be fine. But really, I want it to be a focus on the shoes and nothing else, and not worry about the background this time.